Okay? So 90% of all crypto is going to be gone in a few years. Now, what are the problems that we see? These are the two premises, right? Crypto is the future of finance, and 90% of all coins are going to disappear in 2 years. That's our beliefs, that's our thesis. And the problem that we see is that currently there is no real way to earn interest on your crypto, right? A lot of our coins are sitting in various exchanges and wallets, and they do not work for us. We want to build a wallet that put those coins to work and allow us to earn interest. There is no place for pros. Those people who, like us, who believe that 90% of those coins are going to disappear, there is no place for them to short those coins. And the third issue is this. The world still runs on dollars. A year or two ago, we had this belief that we'll be able to walk into a store and pay with Bitcoin, pay with our Ether. Well, that's no longer the case. In fact, there are less and less businesses accepting crypto today. It's becoming predominantly a store of value. And the world still runs on dollars. It runs on fiat. Okay? What do you do if you've got all this crypto? You want to hold it. You want to hold it for the long term, and still you need cash. You need cash to, buy a new bedroom set for your new child. You need cash in order to buy a car. Whatever this may be, still, the world runs on dollars. So, our solution to this problem is a wallet. First and foremost, a wallet that gives you money back. You hand us your coins, and we'll talk about that in a second, and you'll be able to earn interest. The second solution, the second part of the solution, is a platform that gives people, those professional traders, the opportunity to go short against crypto overall. And the third one is a wallet that helps you to earn profits. How does this work? On the right-hand side, the left-hand side, you've got lenders. Those lenders who believe coins are going to be worth a lot. I'm a coin holder. I believe that my Bitcoin and Ether and all these other coins are actually going to be worth something. And they're going to raise in value. I don't want to sell them. I'll be able to download the Celsius wallet, move the coins from whatever exchange I have them on, and I'll be able to either earn interest on those coins or borrow fiat against those coins. Everything on the Celsius platform. Borrowers, on the other side of the platform, these are traders. They want to go short. They'll be able to log into our platform and issue short orders, short sales orders. They'll be able to lend coins from the lenders and go short. They are not going to get the coins. We will be selling those coins on their behalf. So at no point there will be a situation that you as a lender won't be able to get your coins back, and I'll talk about that process in a second. But in a nutshell, that's what the platform looks like. A mobile app on the one side, a platform for borrowers on the other side, an exchange that sits in the middle, and Celsius tokens that are the engine, that are the gas of this platform. We spend significant time building security into our wallet and into everything that we do. We're Israelis, and Israelis know security. Israel knows cybersecurity. That's what we're good at. We're considered to be the best in the world in cyber and cybersecurity. We invested millions of dollars in building various security systems, authentications into our platform. You cannot use it without KYC. You cannot use our platform. You cannot use our mobile app without going through massive KYC. We're seeing that as a necessity throughout the world today. So that's a bit about our security. This is what our wallet looks like. We believe that in order to really bring the next 100 million people, we'll need to make this really simple to use. Okay, we believe that one thing that Steve Jobs has brought to the world is the simplicity, it's the beautiful, it's the beauty, it's the ease of use. If somebody needs to think, we didn't do a good job on UI UX. And I don't know about you, I know some people with a bunch of PhDs that do not know, still today, how to send one coin from one person to the other. You need to have a PhD. You expect my parents to know how to transfer coins with all these hash and copy and paste. We wanted to make this really simple and really beautiful to move your coins, to earn interest, and to move them from one wallet to the other. That's our wallet. As I said, you'll be able to transfer crypto in and out. You'll be able to earn degrees, our cell token, on a daily basis. You'll have a proof of stake that will allow you also to earn more degrees and actually earn interest. You'll be able to manage your assets. You'll be able to borrow cash against your crypto right from the app. And you'll be a fast and easy KYC AML check at the beginning. This is the platform that these pros are going to use. This is something that we're going to release at the beginning of next year. They'll be able to very quickly issue short sale orders from this platform, only to leverage fiat currency. And what's nice about this, they'll be able to, when they issue these short orders, they'll be paying those fees with cell tokens. We believe that there is a massive, massive market opportunity here. $500 billion, the market cap of all those listed coins. There are only 30 million wallets. We want to be able to, we want to be one of these companies that has helped this ecosystem, has helped the community to bring the next 100 million. If we want to increase the value of these coins, we need to give people a reason, a use case that they will have in order to go out there and use crypto. And we believe that use case is credit. A bit about the team, most specifically about this gentleman, Alex Mashinsky. He's my co-founder and CEO. Alex has ran 7 companies, 7 technology companies, 2 public companies, has had $3 billion in exits. Now, why is that important? It's important because when you build a platform like this, with all due respect to the many people in their 20s that are sitting here, you guys are the future generation. But if you want to build a multi-billion-dollar companies, we really need to bring experience and talent and people who've done this before. And Alex Mashinsky has done this before many, many times. In fact, when you look at the top 20 exits from New York, Alex has 2 of the top 20 exits to come from New York City. He's done this multiple times, and we are fortunate to have him as our CEO. Neil Goldstein has been a partner of mine in previous startup. He's been a CTO, and we're actually happy to announce today that we hired the CTO of Bloomberg Trading, to become a new CTO and to lead the technology and product development of this platform into the future. We're a 35 people team. We have offices in Tel Aviv, offices in New York, and offices in Belgrade, Serbia. And with the help of my friend Kim here, we will all have office in Seoul here too as well. Right, Kim, you can help me? Wonderful. So that's the team. We've got a great team of advisors as well. A bit about the roadmap. The mobile app is available on Android today. iOS is going to be available hopefully by the end of the week. It takes a few days with Apple, as you all know. You'll be able to borrow. We'll be able to. The hope is, right, we got to be very careful when we make these type of promises in this space because things change. Our hope is that around May, June, we'll be able to give the first few loans against cryptos, right? And the beginning of next year, 2019, our hope is that we'll be able to allow a bunch of crypto hedge funds to start going short against crypto. The full platform will be available second, third quarter of 2018, but this year, around May, June, we will be able to issue the first few loans right from within the app. There's some more information. If you would like to learn more, please find us on Telegram, Celsius Network, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you very much to CoinNest and for you guys that have listened to me today. Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it. Thanks. Questions? Yes.
What I want to know is, could you explain a little bit about when the borrower traders bought the process or devices?
The process?
The process when the borrower
default. Okay, so let's go back to this for a second. So let's say that I have 10 Bitcoins and you would like to borrow them from me in order to go short, right? Right. What's going to happen now is that you're not going to get those Bitcoins from me. You're going to issue the short order. Celsius is going to take the 10 Bitcoins from me and is going to sell them. Right now, and let's say Bitcoin is worth, I don't know, $1,000 for the sake of simplicity. So right now there's $10,000 that Celsius owes you. They're sitting in a bank somewhere, and you're now entering into a short position. You won't be able to do that without doing two things. First, depositing some collateral. 30, 40, 50% depending on the coin. And then buying sell tokens in order to issue that transaction. Now let's run two experiments. Experiment number one, you're right. And Bitcoin went down to $500. Everybody's happy. We buy the Bitcoin for $500. I'm getting my 10 Bitcoins back. You get your profit. And you go and you buy your girlfriend, hopefully, a drink in order to celebrate your position. What happens if the Bitcoin goes up? Now, I don't know if you notice, the volatility of Bitcoins and Ether has been tremendous on the downside. It's rarely that it shoots up 50% in a few minutes or a few seconds. But even if that happens, I have your collateral to protect me up to 50%, and I'm going to start issuing margin calls, telling you, hey, start adding more money, or we're going to close the position on your behalf. So there is no default, because at any given time I've got both cash sitting at the exchange, and I've got cash sitting in the collateral to protect me from any type of default, quote unquote, that you may have. Does that make sense? Other questions? Don't, John. My knee's hurting. Come on. Yes.
예, 그 아이디어 굉장히 재밌는 아이디어 같은데요. 지금 그 담보라고 해야 되나? 그 좀 빌려주는 그 기본적인 주체가 지금 암호화폐인데, 암호화폐가 아시겠지만 시가가 지금 일정하지가 않고 계속 그 변동성이 있잖아요. 그래서 이거를 기반으로 해서 어떤 그 대여를 해준다라고 한다 그러면 그 가치가 이제 저희가 빌려준 사람 입장에서 봤을 때는 높을 때 빌려주고 낮을 때 받을 수 있는 그런 문제가 있는데, 그런 리스크를 어떤 식으로 좀 관리하시는지가 궁금하고요. 또 하나는 이거하고 비슷한, 이 업체하고 비슷한 그 비즈니스 모델을 가져가는 업체들이 또 있는 걸로 알고 있는데, 그 다른 경쟁사들하고 비교했을 때 이 업체의 장점이라고 그럴까요? 경쟁력이 어떤 건지 좀 알고 싶습니다.
So, you spoke specifically on people, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, lending fiat against their crypto, right? So yes, the crypto is indeed volatile, but we've got a risk model that protects us against this volatility with, at any given time, our ability to do margin calls. So if God forbid something went, if one of the coins, and we're going to start with 3-4 coins and slowly going to expand to the top 20, but if one of these coins went down dramatically, we're going to issue some margin calls, and if we're seeing that there's no response, we're going to be selling those coins in order to protect the position. As far as other companies, there are other companies doing that specific element of lending against crypto. And while those companies are nice, we have what I believe to be a superior product, a superior technology, and a far superior team, with also a partnership that we're working on with one of the US largest financial institutions. That partnership is not signed yet, it's in the works, that we believe will give us access to hundreds of millions of dollars in capital in order to really scale that far above and beyond anything that our competitors have done. Having said that, let's be very honest. This is a very big space. There should be no 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 companies doing well. We can have 10, 15 companies doing something similar in different parts of the world, doing extremely well. The more companies that we have that doing something good for the community. We are a company that gives 90% of our profit back to coin holders. The more companies do that, the better we, together with them and you, can win against the big banks. And that's our goal, is to give us, you, an alternative to what we currently have. You know, I drove with a friend of mine in New York, and in Tel Aviv, and in Korea, and it's almost impossible to buy a home. Why is it? We work so hard, and we still cannot put a down payment that we need in order to buy a home. Why? Because banks are making it almost impossible for us. We want to be that alternative, and we don't have to be the only one. We can do this together with other companies. We can cooperate. That's what's so wonderful about this ecosystem. We don't have to compete all the time. We can work together for the betterment of society. That's our goal. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
네, 많은 질문들이 오갔습니다. 이번엔 4번째 팀의 발표를 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 벌써 2번째 캠업에 참가하는 팀인데요. 바로 에머고의 수석 고문인 데런 캐머스입니다. 블록체인 생태계의 통합과 벤처 기업들을 위한 개발 지원 등 블록체인 전반의 혁신을 꿈꾸는 프로젝트입니다. 에머고의 데런 캐머스를 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 부탁드립니다.
Hello guys, thank you, good afternoon. I'm happy to be back in Seoul. Who has heard of the Cardano project? Cardano or ADA? Okay, so a lot of people have heard of Cardano. Does anyone know what Emurgo is? Anyone heard Emurgo? Okay, very few people. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Emurgo, a little bit about the Cardano project. The Cardano project is fundamentally different from a lot of the other presenters today. We're building an ecosystem. We're building a blockchain platform. A blockchain platform that has a cryptocurrency, it has a smart contracts layer, it will have enterprise layer, and also much more. So let me show you in a little video a little bit about the Cardano project and also what Emurgo does. Do we have this video? Guys in the booth. All right, it's a beautiful video. Okay, so apparently there's no sound. So the Cardano project is built on a scientific philosophy. It's built on peer-reviewed cryptography, and it's supported by 3 entities. The Cardano Foundation, it focuses on regulation, it focuses on standards, it focuses on community, and it's an objective enterprise body.
Input-Output Hong Kong designs, builds, and maintains the core protocol. Finally, Emurgo facilitates commercial growth and usage of the card.
All right, it's okay. We'll skip the video for now.
Meet Cardano, a third-generation blockchain platform built with a scientific, research-first driven philosophy, world-class engineering standards, and an eye to the future. The Cardano project is supported by 3 organizations. The Cardano Foundation focuses on community, ecosystem, regulation, standards, and is an objective enterprise body. Input-Output Hong Kong designs, builds, and maintains the core protocol. Finally, Emurgo facilitates commercial growth and usage of Cardano blockchain. How does Emurgo grow the Cardano ecosystem? Emurgo connects companies seeking blockchain solutions with teams that build solutions on the Cardano blockchain and helps those teams grow through capital, connections, and resources. Teams building dApps and smart contracts on Cardano can seek investment, connect with other teams, talent, and mentors, plug into an accelerator, incubator, or cowork, and fund their first sales and clients. Companies can leverage Emurgo's network to find teams to build dApps or enterprise solutions for their organization. To find out more, visit Emurgo.io.
All right, so I hope that gives you a little clearer picture of what the Cardano ecosystem is made of. It's made of 3 actors, the Cardano Foundation, Input-Output Hong Kong, and Emurgo. Later today, you'll see Charles Hoskinson speak. He's the CEO of IOHK. I'm sure many of you guys are here for him, so I won't take too much of your time. But we're Emurgo, we're the venture builder for Cardano, and we've also brought along one of the teams that we funded to show you an example of what you can build on the Cardano blockchain. All right, so Emurgo really does 4 things. We connect people, we invest, we consult, and we educate. So if you're thinking about what is Emurgo in the Cardano ecosystem, you can compare it very similar to what Consensus does for Ethereum. Okay, so Emurgo Ventures is kind of the core of what we do. So we're very different. We're not here because we have a project. We're not here because we're selling tokens. We're here actually to connect with individual developers. So is anyone a developer in this audience? Okay, so I'll go over it really quickly. So startups are the lifeblood of an ecosystem. If you have a smart contracts layer, it doesn't do you any good unless people are actually using the smart contracts. So for example, we're setting up a startup ecosystem. We're setting up accelerators, accelerator partnerships, incubator partnerships. We also provide expert advice and mentors. And we also make developer resources so that developers can choose to build their dApp or their dApp or smart contracts on the Cardano platform. We also have a capital division. So we will have a venture capital body that will be coming out around the middle of this year. So we invest directly in companies. We also provide expert advice, expert network, and also introductions. If your company needs to sell into an organization, or you need to get connected, for example, to another dApps developer, because maybe you can work together. Maybe, for example, you are Celsius and you're providing a credit service and you need to connect with someone who is issuing KYC documentation. So we connect these projects. And we do enterprise solutions, so Charles will tell you more about the technical side of the enterprise solutions. But enterprise solutions, it's a separate chain that's using the core Cardano technology. It's typically for large organizations that have different levels of privacy, of security, and also interoperability. So you can come to us if you need advisory, if you need feasibility studies, and then finally, if you want to build these software solutions, you can talk to us. So visit Emurgo.io, or you can write us info@emurgo.io. And finally, we'll have an academy solution. So we're creating a formal certifications as well as curriculum, so you can learn to develop on Cardano itself. You're going to hear a little bit later how the whole Cardano ecosystem, it focuses on formal software verification and functional programming languages. However, it also offers the tools so that anyone that's currently developing on Ethereum can seamlessly port their smart contracts over to Cardano once the computation layer is out, meaning that you can choose to see if Cardano is a better, more robust, more scalable platform in the future. And actually, that's what one of our teams is doing right now. Okay, so Emurgo is all over the place right now. We have our headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. We also have an office in Hong Kong. I'll talk about a little bit about that. We're starting some meetups in New York. We have an office in London, and we have some partnerships, which I'll tell you about more. So if you're interested in partnering with Emurgo, you can use these kind of as a reference. So Emurgo, right now we have our accelerator program in the works. Ryan, can you raise your hand? So if you're interested in acceleration, you can talk with Ryan afterwards. So acceleration, of course, we provide investment. The thing about the space is everyone provides investment, so it's not so much of an added value. What you get in this space, so you get access to our expert network, you get access to our connections, and specifically you get access to guidance. So for example, right now you have very strong regulatory oversight that's looking into the space, and it's very quickly changing. So if you're a team that wants to crowdfund and you want to do it on Cardano, you're going to need to know that you have all of your regulatory boxes checked. Why? Because you don't want any problems later down the road hurting your company or hurting your project. So we connect you with experts who are in touch with regulation in various jurisdictions. They can provide you guidance about structuring, about legal advice, and we think that's a huge benefit in this space. Okay, so what does Emurgo do in terms of partnerships? How do Emurgo partnerships benefit the Cardano ecosystem? So we announced a little while ago a partnership with Siren Labs. Siren Labs is based out of Israel. They created the world's first blockchain smartphone. So they are going to provide native support for Cardano and ADA on the next smartphone, which is called Fini. So how does that benefit the Cardano ecosystem? How does that benefit every Cardano holder? It distributes the technology, and it also provides each person the possibility to do cold storage directly on their Fini phone. And so that's one of the partnerships that we're really looking forward to, because it makes more people, it puts more people into the ecosystem, helps them use the technology, and helps them use it securely. Another partnership that we have is with China Accelerator and also MOX. And these are two different accelerators that offer a very different value proposition to our own. China Accelerator is the #1 accelerator that helps foreign teams come into Chinese market, or Chinese teams to go outside the Chinese market. On the other side, MOX is located in Taipei, and it has partnerships with an operating system, an Android operating system that comes pre-installed on 160 million smartphones in Southeast Asia and Latin America. So that means any Cardano-focused projects that come through this ecosystem can potentially leverage automatic distribution to the huge network. And that, again, turns all those cell phones into devices that are using Cardano technology. And finally, we offer investment. So we actually we brought one of our teams along with us today. It's called Liquiz. And what are we looking for investments? We're looking for huge market opportunities. We're looking for a huge opportunity for blockchain technology. So anytime there's a huge case for privacy, for security, or for provability, that's where we see a huge opportunity. And that's what we're looking for in our investment focus. So if you're interested in seeking investment from Emurgo, please contact us at invest@emurgo.io. My name is Darren Camus. I'll take questions at the end, but right now I'd like to turn the mic over to our portfolio company, Liquiz.
Thanks a lot, Darren. Could you please put up the other slides? All right. First of all, thanks to Coinne스트 for having us here, and of course to Cardano and Emurgo for supporting us. I think it's a great use case or actually prove what Emurgo is doing besides only investing. And as Darren mentioned, we are one of our objectives is to deploy or migrate from Ethereum to Cardano by the end of the year. And of course, we were also one of the first, actually the first investment of Emurgo. And why they invested in us is probably because we tackle a huge problem, which is access to finance, especially in East Asia. And here is the global figure. We talk about 43 trillion that are on the books of businesses and any given day, with average payment terms of 60 days. Only around 7% of that is financed by traditional players such as banks, leaving us with a locked capital of 40 trillion and therefore a huge opportunity which we need to have a focused approach to tackle. So therefore our team is based in China. We focus on the European China trade, especially fast-moving consumer goods, which is a growing market. And as you can see, in 2016 that was 11 billion US dollars. We have not only this massive market, but also validations from traditional players, like Market Invoice, which is growing exponentially since 2010, and LiquidX.com. So the issue with those players is, or also banks, is that a central institute is giving you a price for the underlying asset. So a really nice use case for decentralization, actually creating an open marketplace to price the underlying assets of such a B2B trade. Again, the market size a bit brought down into different pieces. And how we do it, as my big speaker before me from Celsius already mentioned, it's very, very important to have an easy-to-use user interface. The small medium enterprise coming to our platform is not interested in how the technology behind works. So we create it very easy for them. Just go to our platform, register. We run an KYC AML process in the back end and check that it's a legal registered entity and everything is good to go. Then you can create a project which is backed by real trade documents, invoices, etc., which we use as collateral for the security that we issue and using blockchain in the back. Because it has the advantages of you don't need a custodian bank in the middle anymore, and you can reduce settlement times from T+2, T+3 days to less than an hour. So we use Hong Kong law for that, of issuing debt securities to professional investors only. And the small medium enterprise has its advantage of getting the cash liquidity immediately instead of waiting 60 days or longer. Even better, it's not a central institute giving him or her the price for the asset, it's an open auction. So different banks, different investors bid on the asset, and therefore we find a market price that can actually immediately be traded, and is a standardized product, exactly what institutional investors are looking for. We have our beta actually live, it's continuously developed, and our first use case was a small medium enterprise working for the German car manufacturer Porsche, and it was around 50,000 US dollars small use case, showing that there is a market and it's actually working. Now, as I just mentioned, we have the buyer-seller coming to our platform, issuing the digital token that then is auctioned and sold to a liquidity provider, institutional investor like a fund or bank. And then you already have a secondary marketplace where you can trade those assets, which gives you an additional actually benefit because it increases the overall liquidity in the market. Business model of ours is very, very straightforward. We charge for this technical infrastructure, so we are the broker in the middle. We don't touch any money, therefore are not into regulatory oversight, only institutional investors, no retail investors. And for providing this infrastructure, we charge a service fee. Just illustrative, it's 1%. Our financial model is more close to 0.5% because that's the benchmark actually of the market. Our go-to-market is mainly through partnerships. We know there's a huge need in this fast-moving consumer goods area, and actually we can work together with distributors such as Intermarché and others to actually sell our solution to their existing clients. Plus, as I mentioned before, we have a very good network and are actually in touch with other players such as Porsche, Daimler, etc. in Germany, as the car makers, and some large Chinese actually investment banks who are looking for a factoring or like a securitization platform such as ours for the One Belt, One Road project. Competitors are mainly in the traditional area, not so much in the modern area of digitizing the whole securitization plus supply chain process. And as I mentioned before, we have a couple of competitive advantages, mainly that here in Asia we are first to market. The competitive pricing is through the marketplace, which is an inherent feature. And it's very easy to use, yeah, and it's through combining traditional with the modern technologies, it's also scalable. Our team has a couple of years of issuing or growing and scaling businesses. Yeah, Florian, he's running a business for 10 years successfully in Shanghai. Armin, 20 years. It's my second venture myself. I built something similar to Alipay and WeChat Pay before in Germany. And we have a very strong team of advisors on top of that from all different regions. Yeah? So we have Bernd Uwe Stucken, he is a lawyer since '86 in China. Karl Wegner is the head of R3, focusing on trade finance. And Miguel Solana is the former head of innovation for Santander China. So we built up a nice balance between experienced senior people and a young dynamic team. Our investors are Emurgo, also SOS Ventures. It's the most active seed stage VC globally, and we are based in Shanghai in in one of the leading fintech spaces called Shape Value. So yeah, we are currently also raising funds. So if you are interested in using or investing in us, we also have a small present for you. We can give you some of our tokens for free. The token economics are very straightforward. It's a membership-based token, so meaning all the fees within the ecosystem are settled in this token. So thank you very much for listening to me, and if you have questions, I'm looking forward to answer those.
Any questions for Emurgo or Luis Traxia?
네, 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 많이 기다리셨죠? 이제 3세대 블록체인을 꿈꾸고 있는 암호화폐의 선구자이자 이더리움의 창조자를 만나볼 시간입니다. 이더리움의 공동 창립자이자 카르다노 IOHK의 대표인 찰스 호스킨스를 여러분께 소개해드립니다. 현재 블록체인의 과거와 현재, 미래를 직접 경험해 보시기를 바랍니다. 다시 한번 여러분 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 부탁드립니다.
I never have slides. Oh, is there a homepage? No homepage. We're just gonna have to live with this. Hi, everybody. Dan, you sound enthusiastic. Come on, hi, hey. Hey, there we go. Everyone having a good day? This is my last presentation in Korea. I saved the best for last. Oh, we're doing simultaneous translation. Okay, this is cool. So I can just talk at my normal Hoskinson speed. So I'm sorry in advance, translators. So hi, I'm Charles Hoskinson. For those of you who know me, you'll know that I run IOHK. For those of you who don't, I'll give you a brief introduction. I'm the CEO of a company that specializes in cryptocurrency engineering and cryptocurrency research. So on the engineering side, what we do is we build cryptocurrencies. So we work on projects like Zencash and Ethereum Classic, and one called Cardano, in case anybody's heard of that. And on the research side, we actually look at the science of cryptocurrencies. So we specialize in things like distributed systems research, game theory research, privacy research, but also law and policy. So everything from how do we build a blockchain to how do we make it private to how do we make it okay for governments and other policymakers, and what does that actually mean under the hood. So the company was founded in 2015 by Jeremy Wood and myself. In fact, it's pretty rare that Jeremy and I are in the same room because he lives in Osaka and I live in Colorado, and we're always traveling. So it's nice to have both founders here. And it was just two of us, and now we've grown to about 130 people, and we operate in 10 countries, and we're pretty much in a position where we can do whatever the heck we want. And Jeremy and I still own 50-50 of the company, so we are completely revenue driven as an organization. So tonight, we're going to talk about our flagship product, something that we've been working on since 2015, and that product is called Cardano. And we're also going to talk a bit about how Cardano fits into the marketplace. Where is Cardano at? What is Cardano all about? Okay. So Cardano started as a project of first principles. So what happened is that I've been in the Bitcoin space for long enough to remember a time before smart contracts, a time before Ethereum, a time before Bitcoin was even considered to be real and legitimate. If you go back in history about 7 years, Bitcoin was considered to be kind of a shaky, scammy thing by pretty much everyone in the entire world. There was a very small group of people who loved it and thought it was amazing, and the rest of the people, if they had heard of it, the only context they had is, it's that thing you use to buy drugs off of the Silk Road. That was what they believed. And so basically people said, well, if it's going to survive, it's got to be banned, and it's probably not going to survive, so we'll ignore it. Then something happened. In 2013, Bitcoin got valuable. It went from a few $100 million to $1 billion, and it had this huge surge of people entering the space. And that surge of people started believing that not only is this thing legitimate and real, but it's here to stay. And here's what happens when the market starts believing that something is real. They say it's not good enough. Kind of like the internet. For a long time, it was just this nascent little thing. No one particularly cared about it. A lot of really smart people argued about it, but it was an academic thing. And then suddenly people said, you know, this internet thing, it's here to stay, but the experience is terrible. I can't do much with it. Then the web browser comes. And then suddenly you're able to actually go to web pages, but those pages are boring. They can't do anything interesting. You needed JavaScript. And when you got JavaScript, then you got Gmail. Then you got Amazon. Then you got YouTube. Then you got Facebook. All of these great companies that we basically now spend 80% of our lives, if not longer, on or their localized equivalents. So similarly, in 2013, people started talking about going beyond Bitcoin and going into this notion of programmable finance, the idea of the smart contract. So what the smart contract is all about is saying that transactions are going to be arbitrarily complex. There's always some strange terms and facts and circumstances and other things going on. You know, you could say, okay, if you fix my roof, I'll give you $100, but only on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it's 50. You could do that. That's an example of a contract. People do these types of things all the time. Well, guess what? There's no way I can, as a protocol designer, anticipate your need. So how about I do this? Why don't I give you a programming language, and then you can figure out how to write up your particular financial relationship. This was the idea behind Ethereum, which was the second generation of cryptocurrencies. And basically, it was an experiment. We thought it wasn't going to work. We said, well, we'll go do it for 6 months, and when it fails, we'll go do something else. And it turns out that Ethereum became wildly successful, just like Bitcoin was wildly successful. And people said, this is amazing, we love it. But there's one big problem with Ethereum, is that it cannot scale as a system, nor can any current cryptocurrency scale as a system to millions to billions of users. So you see all these wonderful presentations that people do about the problems, the real problems they want to solve for companies like Samsung and BMW and Intel and IBM, or for governments. things like property registration, things like e-voting systems, things like next generation identity management systems that are fraud resistant. These are real problems, and if you solve them, they make a lot of people's lives better. They make a lot of businesses make a lot more money and be far more competitive. But they also require a certain degree of maturity and a certain degree of underlying service and utility within these platforms to be solvable. And the problem with second generation blockchain technology is they just don't provide that. Like Bitcoin, Ethereum was really a proof of concept for an idea, the idea of smart contracts. But it's not a production system. It's not something meant to go solve all of your problems. So enter the third generation. So back in 2015, we went to the whiteboard and we started sketching out all these problem domains and all these ideas, and we were trying to get to the heart of the matter, saying, what are the collection of problems that we have to solve in order to be able to actually build a system that works for billions of people? As a thought experiment, if we were to go to Venezuela and tear out the entire government and plop in a cryptocurrency to run the whole show, the voting, the driver's licenses, the economy, the credit system, the banking system, how much technology would have to be in that protocol? How much capability would have to be in that protocol to be able to solve that problem? That's what we asked in 2015. Pretty simple question, pretty insane answer, which is a whole lot. And then we said, boy, if we're going to go and try to do something like that, if we're going to actually try to solve such a problem, well then how are we going to solve it? Who's going to solve it? Am I so smart and so arrogant that I believe that I can go and solve all the problems of the world? No, no one can, no matter how good they are, how rich they are. It's a collective problem. It's a huge problem. So we said we need to come up with a process upon which we can find a way to solve these problems, pay for their solutions, and get consensus around them, and gradually, over a long arc of time, years to decades, be able to build such a system. So that was the kernel of the Cardano project, and we settled around 3 pillars. One was scalability. So we need to build a system that works to scale of billions, as I mentioned, but really when you look at that under the hood, we need to build a system that gets faster and when more people join the system. So BitTorrent is a great example of that. If you download a very popular movie or a very popular series like Game of Thrones, you get it really quickly because lots of people are downloading it. If you download something that's not so popular, you get it slow. That's a protocol that gets faster as you get more users, not slow. And cryptocurrencies need this property somehow, some way. They just need to be able to process more transactions. The network needs to get faster. You need to have more total amount of blockchain data you can store. Okay, that's scalability. That's one of the pillars. Hard pillar, but something that needs to be solved. A lot of people working on it. Second, there is not going to be one standard. If it was, it would have been Bitcoin. Bitcoin lost. So there's going to be thousands of cryptocurrencies, and there will continue to be thousands of cryptocurrencies. The names will change, the actors will change behind them. Some will be government sponsored, like maybe the PBOC will create one. Some of them will be built by random weird people over the internet. But the point is that all of these things just have to get along somehow, some way. And when I say get along, that means when you have a token in one ledger, that token is able to transact and talk to another ledger. So for example, you can send a transaction from Litecoin to Bitcoin, or from Ethereum to Cardano, or from Ripple to Dash. Interoperability. And going a step further, interoperability with the legacy financial system. Many of you have bank accounts, many of you have credit cards. Wouldn't it be so nice if you could store your crypto maybe on your bank's ledger? Wouldn't it be so nice if you could put your crypto on your debit card or your credit card? Well, there are some people trying to do this, but it's still a huge challenge. And the reality is there's trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth locked in that system, and it can't quite move between both systems easily. So interoperability is a big legacy problem, and it's a big problem in the cryptocurrency space. Furthermore, interoperability at the enterprise level is quite interesting because we have this idea of private blockchains. Things like IBM Hyperledger, things like Microsoft Bletchley, things like Cadena, things like the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And what happens when you issue a token on one of those ledgers? Well, wouldn't it be nice if that could move into the general internet and come back? An example I love to use is, does anybody here ever have played World of Warcraft in their lives? That's how I know the translation's working. Okay, there's a guy in the back, so the translation's working. Good. So if you played World of Warcraft, what do you have there? You have items. You have gold. That's kind of like a token. Wouldn't it be so cool if that stuff you've earned, you can take and bring it into the main network, sell it on an exchange like Bithumb? Why not? Well, that's a private ledger and a public ledger. So how do we get them talking to each other? That's an interoperability question, and there are thousands of these interoperability questions that exist and will continue to exist. So we got to solve that. Finally, the last pillar that we identified is this notion of sustainability. And really that just comes down to the who pays and who decides problem. If these protocols are eventually going to be used as the backbone of an economy, of a government, to control the books of a major corporation like Microsoft or Samsung, they're going to be really expensive to maintain, to evolve, to research. Hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars, because you need new capabilities over time as technology evolves and society changes. Well, here's this thing, it's called the golden rule. Golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. So if your goal is decentralization, and you don't have a strategy for who's going to pay the bill for how these systems are going to evolve, then the reality is that you're going to centralize around whoever's paying the bill. Just a fact. If you pay, you get to make the decisions. Second, the evolution of the system, how do we do that right now? We have cults of personality behind leaders. If you're Ethereum, you have Vitalik. If you're EOS, you have Dan Larimer. If you're Cardano, you have Charles. And we say, oh, this is the way we must go. Is that decentralized? No. And even if I'm a good guy, what happens when I get old? I get pretty fat. You know, I'm traveling too much. Might die of a heart attack. Plane might crash. What happens if my replacement isn't a nice guy? Or Dan's replacement's not a nice guy? Or Vitalik's replacement's not so nice? You may have your entire livelihood in this system, and then suddenly you have a key man problem, a governance problem. So the last issue, the sustainability issue, is how do you decide where the system will go without relying upon a central authority to make that decision for you? Because these are global systems with potentially billions of people using them over time. No one person should be given that much power. So these are the three pillars that we identified back in 2015. We'd really like to make a meaningful and substantive attempt at solving. And that encapsulates the philosophical core of the Cardano project. So let's talk about how we intend on solving those problems and what we've already solved. So back in 2015, we realized that the very first thing we needed to do to solve these problems is first make them smaller, so break them into lots of little problems. Second, we needed to engage the universities. So we went about a very aggressive recruiting campaign and hired a chief scientist and lots of cryptographers, and we started writing foundational papers. We asked very basic questions. Questions like, what is a blockchain? You hear it all the time, right? Blockchain, 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 all the time. But what the hell is it? Specifically, what is it to a computer scientist? What properties must it have? What makes it secure? To what extent is it immutable or auditable? Because you hear these buzz phrases, but what does it actually mean? So we wrote a paper called GKL 15, Wangare, Nico Leonardis, and Angelos Kayasas. And in 2015, we gave a definition for what is a ledger. And then we proved that proof of work creates a secure ledger, the heart of Bitcoin. That gives us a baseline. So now we have an idea of what we want to accomplish, and we have an idea of what the people who have come before us have done, and if they work or not. So then we asked ourselves, okay, can we come up with a protocol that satisfies that condition, but then at the same time also satisfies that first pillar? The idea of scalability, so that as you gain users, you gain resources. And so we did a very large literature review. We looked at all these different wonky ideas, some crazy, some practical, some a bit too practical, and we realized that maybe proof of stake has within its DNA the capability to actually accommodate this insane design goal. So we did what all academics do. We did a very extensive literature review, and we said, all right, who's written anything at all about proof of stake? We brought all the papers together, and we brought scientists from 6 different countries and 5 different universities together. And we spent over a year, and we produced our first major paper called Ouroboros. But it's not good enough to write a paper, even with bright people. Part of making problems federated, of decentralizing your own ecosystem, is having checks and balances. And the best check and balance in science is this process called peer review. That's the bedrock of what we do at IOHK and how we're building the Cardano project. Peer review isn't putting a paper online and asking random people over the internet for their opinion. Peer review, in a cryptographic sense, is writing a very technical paper and submitting it to either a journal or to a conference that is recognized by the practitioners of that community. In the case of cryptography, there is one community. It's called the IACR, the International Association of Cryptological Researchers. It's a very large organization, many, many thousands of members. All of them have PhDs. They're professors at places like Harvard and Oxford and the University of Tokyo. They're all over the world. And every year they maintain conferences. These are peer review conferences. And guess what? If you want to tempt fate, you can submit your papers to them. The flagship conference is in the United States. It's in Santa Barbara over in California. There's also one in Europe. There's also one usually in Asia. It's called Eurocrypt, AsiaCrypt, and Crypto. And when you submit a paper to one of these things, and these are papers submitted by experts, only about 20% of the time are they accepted. 20%. The vast majority are rejected harshly. Because when you submit, they give you a reason for rejection, and they're not nice about it. Okay, so we said, you know what? It's not just good enough to write this science and to think about things like proof of stake and try to find a way to make it secure and work well and work with our ledger idea. We must take it to the academic community and win them over. And it took us 2 years to do that. So we published, and in 2017, we actually successfully got into Crypto 17, and I went to Santa Barbara with our chief scientist, and we were able to present the paper. Now, that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the story for how peer review works. Because once you've gotten in one of these conferences, you wake up the hornet's nest. It's like kicking the bees. They swarm, and every single person can get academic credit for showing your ideas are wrong. What you've come up with has a flaw that they can break, because they too can publish a paper, and if they get enough of them, they get tenure. They get to teach at a good university. They get higher status. They're the guy who broke something prominent and embarrassed the great cryptographer. That's how it works. The other consequence is that you get free labor. It's the closest thing you get to slave labor in the tech world. Because guess what? You're going to have thousands of people running around trying to improve your system, break your system, and none of them work for you. And in many cases, even if you wanted to hire them, you can't. Adi Shamir is the inventor of RSA. He's rich. He has a Turing Prize. It's the Nobel Prize of Computer Science. There is no way that man's going to work for anybody. He's very happy in his current job. He does whatever he wants to do. He shows up whatever he wants to, and he only thinks about the problems he wants to think about. The only way I can talk to that guy is at Eurocrypt or Crypto, or through the peer review process, or having him read one of my papers and trying to break it. And he's one of the smartest men alive. So, this process is amazing if you invest the time to use it. And that's what we decided to do with the Cardano project. And we've already seen great outputs by being accepted. The other thing is we've seen great citation counts. Ouroboros has now been cited over 50 times, and people are actually already starting to build their own protocols using our protocol. I was so excited to see a paper recently called OmniLedger, which was out of École Polytechnique Lausanne and Trinity College. And this paper is a sharding protocol that uses Ouroboros. We never talked to the authors, they just built something. And we all get that for free. So that's the first part of this concept, is identify these grand problems you want to solve with a distant goal, kind of like SpaceX with Mars. We want to go do something crazy. Second, engage a much larger community than yourself that acts as an independent check. Because the reality is there are thousands of these cryptocurrencies, and guys, it's just too hard to know which ones are real and which ones aren't. Everybody's making claims. Secure, thousands of transactions per second. I solved this, I solved that. Quantum resistant, this resistant, that. How do you know which ones are true and real? How do you have time, even if you have the knowledge and skills, to be able to identify that? The power of peer review is that I don't own that system. No one does. The universities of the world have come together for it, and it provides an independent check and balance that the claims my team are making is correct. And now we have allies all around the world who are interested in the things we're interested in. Some are working with us, some are working against the work we're doing. That's okay. We'll solve it together. Now, that alone would be awesome. And if all Cardano ever was just a computer science project that's solving hard problems, that would be fun, but it's not useful. You actually have to build something. You actually have to write code. You actually have to deploy the damn thing, right? So there's many ways to go about that. How do you go about implementing these pieces of paper that have lots of pretty math on them? Well, the conventional way would be to pick a popular programming language like Java or C++ or JavaScript and just go and build it and hope you actually built it correctly. And it works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you have the DAO, and hundreds of millions of dollars are lost. Or the parity hack, and hundreds of millions of dollars are lost. Or you didn't actually implement what was in the paper, and it turns out all that work you did to prove something is secure is for nothing. So we realized early on that if we were going to go to the trouble of bringing in academic rigor into our system, that we must build the systems correctly. So we looked and said, well, are there any software engineering techniques that exist, that have been around for a while, that are proven, that can allow us to reliably implement our software correctly? Reasonable question. And so we said, well, what industries does it have to work the first time? Now, I travel a lot, usually the window seat. I look at the jet engine. That doesn't get the blue screen of death very often, does it? Doesn't crash very often. Because if it did, the plane would fall out of the sky. And that'd kill me. Not so good. So the people who write the software for that system have to think very carefully to make sure that that software works right always, and the first time. Because if it doesn't work the first time, that's the last time. The same for NASA. They sent a probe to Mars, and it's driving around the surface of the planet. What happens if it crashes? Is somebody going to go and kick it? No, you can't. It's Mars. It might take a little while to send somebody to go and fix it. So the software has to work the first time, or it's the last time. So there's a collection of techniques called high assurance software engineering, and it's been around for about 3 decades. In industries like the aerospace industry, so companies like Boeing, industries like NASA, where they send stuff to space, anything where the cost of failure of the system is in the billions, or the loss of human life, like the brakes on the Shinkansen, for example, or any normal train. Those industries have developed out these software techniques. And we said, boy, wouldn't it be great to take those techniques and import them into the blockchain space and use them to implement the papers we have? Novel idea. So then it's fair to ask, well, Charles, why doesn't everybody do this? Why doesn't the general world do this? Well, here's why. It's horrendously expensive. It's horrendously time-consuming. And it's really, really, really difficult to do. And only a small group of people can do it. Therein lies the dilemma. The things that allow you to do correctly, unfortunately, also are the most difficult to deploy, which makes you the least competitive in terms of getting things to market on time. So you have to make a trade-off and decision. Where on that quality spectrum do you want to live? So we had long discussions about this in 2015 and 2016, and we settled on something like a pseudo-formal approach. So we're not quite where one would be if they're building a space probe, but we're not naked code like your average web application. We kind of live in the middle. And we chose a very special programming language called Haskell. And Haskell's great. It comes out of the academy. It's been around for a few decades. In fact, we loved it so much, the guy who created the programming language, we ended up hiring him because we said, boy, we like it. And so we have a great team of Haskell developers. It took me 1.5 years to hire them. Some of the best in the world. Most of them have master's degrees and PhDs and decades of experience. And we found a way to write these protocols that we have on our paper that we've carefully crafted into Haskell code and actually ship a product. This was an enormous difficult task, and it had never been done before in the cryptocurrency space. As of September of 2017, we were actually able to launch Cardano and Daedalus. It was crazy. We had delay after delay, and every single time we tried to deploy something, it turns out it doesn't work so well on systems like Windows, so we had to build custom tooling and libraries. It was a great journey, a very painful journey. The kind of journey like walking through a field of glass with your bare feet. But it was a worthwhile journey, because on the back end, over time, we know the things we're building are here to last. Because the reality is that whoever wins this fight, the third generation blockchain fight, could end up becoming like the TCP/IP of finance. TCP/IP is a very old protocol. It comes from the 1970s, made by the guys at DARPA, and it's now the heart of the entire internet. They did some things really well, but they did some things not so well. And now, decades later, we still have to live with those poor design decisions. So in my view, it's very important that whatever we do, however we build this stack, that it be designed as best as possible, because if we win, we have to live with the consequences of winning. So that's basically the Cardano project from a scientific and an engineering viewpoint. So let's talk a little bit about why is it useful? What's special about it? Why would a person want to use it? Okay, well, first off, one of the things we immediately recognized is that if you're clever about the way you design things, you can build two products at the same time. One of them is an enterprise product, and one of them is an open blockchain product. So the enterprise projects are things like Hyperledger and Bletchley and Cadena. These are great, and they're going to be used all throughout industry for all kinds of trust and coordination problems. But right now, we consider them to be a separate thing. They live in their own world, and they're completely disconnected from the blockchain space. So much so that the blockchain people tend to not get along with the cryptocurrency people. They say we like blockchain, but not cryptocurrency, or vice versa. And we think that's very sad. In fact, what you ought to do is blur those lines a bit. So we're building in parallel to Cardano an enterprise Cardano framework that has built into it the ability to interoperate with the main Cardano ledger. So this is a way of deploying our technology in a private setting for a corporation, for a university system, for a government. That anything you do there, we can find ways of having those things be able to react to the cryptocurrency space in general. So that's the first thing, is build it in a way that people can talk to each other. Second, there's a lot of computational models out there. So there's a lot of different ways to do smart contracts. There's Neo, and there's Ethereum, and there's EOS, and there's all this stuff. So to me, it's a real bad idea for me to make a strategic bet on just one model. Because what if I get it wrong and I succeed? Then I've inflicted pain upon the whole world. Great example is JavaScript. Not a very good programming language. It was designed in less than 60 days. Unfortunately, it won. And as a consequence, for 15 years, developers had to deal with all these strange quirks, costing hundreds of millions of dollars, not billions of dollars, of extra work hours and debugging to try to correct these errors. And the internet is laden with security bugs and problems as a consequence of poor design decisions early on. So, to my view, it's a good idea to have a multivariate model, to have multiple virtual machines, multiple computational models. So, that's exactly what we're going to do. But Talik's a real bright kid, and he's got a lot of money, and Ethereum's very successful. So you know what? We're going to steal everything they got. We're going to take the Ethereum virtual machine wholesale, put it right into our system. But we have to innovate. So we're building our own virtual machine, which we think is significantly better. And we're doing this with a large team based out of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, led by Grigory Rochu. It's about a 19-person team under the company Runtime Verification. We're taking a more classical virtual machine model based on LLVM, and that is our vision of how we should achieve interoperability with normal languages like Java and C and C++. So when you're writing smart contracts, you can write them in normal programming languages as opposed to these new wonky languages that people tend to invent that aren't really well thought out. But we're not done yet. We're big functional programming fans, so what happens when you have smart contracts that can't fail, that have billions of dollars behind them, big industries behind them like healthcare or IoT? We created a language for that called Plutus. Now normally you'd have to make a decision, where in the spectrum do I want to live? With the way we built Cardano, we can support all of them at the same time. And if it turns out that another market incumbent's pretty good, we can take it, add it to our system too. It's the magic of Cardano's control layer system and the magic of sidechains. So are we done? No! It turns out there are two other computational models that map, and we need to bring them into the Bitcoin space, to the blockchain space, because they're not actually here yet. One of them is something that Microsoft is really interested in, and they've dumped a bunch of money into it, and you know, Microsoft's a pretty bright company. And so we think we should take what they've done and make it better. And it's called verified computation. So what's that all about? Okay, so let's say purple there. Yeah, now you're looking at me. Let's say that he has a bunch of computation he needs done. And so what he's going to do is give it to Ryan. Ryan runs a server. He says, here you go. Here's my program. And here's some data. Go run it. And then what Ryan's going to do is he's going to run a computation and give it to purple. Now, how does purple know that it's done correctly? Well, he can either abstract it or he can trust it. The trust situation is he likes Ryan, I hope he's done it right, probably it's right, okay. Abstracting it is to do how we used to do calculation. In fact, it used to be a profession. It used to be called a calculator. So back at the turn of the century, 1900, 1905, if you needed to do some math, you'd walk into a room with a bunch of people and you'd say, all right, here's the problem, go solve it, and come back in 10 minutes and say, all right, what's the answer? And whatever the majority was, you just take that. They say 64. You say, is that what everybody thinks? Okay, that's what we're going with. 64 is the answer. Thank you, calculator. That's what Ethereum does. That's basically how it works under the hood. What if, instead of doing those two things, there's something in the middle where Ryan can produce a proof of correctness. So he returns not only the output, but also the proof to purple. And all purple knows is the program, the input, the output, and you can see the proof, and just running the proof, which is very small, and not connected to the size of the program, he can actually verify that the output is correct. So let's say it's folding a protein. You actually verify the protein is folded correctly without redoing the work. That's called verified computation, and there's a framework for that called Pinocchio. It came out in 2014 out of Microsoft Research, and there's some follow-up papers about this. But this means that you can now run your smart contract on an untrusted server that's centralized anywhere in the world and still know that it's just as good as if you did it on a replicated virtual machine. This is the kind of innovation that you can bring into your system over time if you engage the academic world. Because the reality is that the nuts and bolts of this tech is really complicated. There's a lot going on. It involves zero-knowledge proofs and all this stuff, and it's difficult to read the papers. So most engineers aren't even aware of Pinocchio, much less have the ability to implement it. Okay? So we're exploring that. And because we're shameless thieves, we stole an employee from Microsoft Research. His name is Markov Kohlweiss. He left MSR Cambridge, and now he's teaching over at University of Edinburgh at our blockchain lab. And he's setting up a dedicated lab for this research line. And over time, we're going to pull these capabilities into Cardano and make them available. But there's one other thing. There's this idea of collective problems that are private in nature. And we see them all the time. Poker is a great example. Decentralized exchange is another example. So let's take poker for a moment. Why should your card game be the concern of the entire network, of all the people there? It's not. But under the Ethereum model, and even EOS and other models, it is the concern of the entire network. It competes for resources with everyone. So how about we do this? Why don't we use the blockchain as a way to find each other and to store a little bit of information? It's called a trusted bulletin board. But do all the actual running of the game off-chain and using something called multi-party computation. It's a shared computation that you and the other players do, and then the output of it is you can determine who won and who lost and make sure that people get their winnings and losses. But all those intermediate calculations don't settle on the blockchain. And they are off network, in a private network. So they run at the speed of the game, not the speed of the cryptocurrency. But because they're connected to a blockchain and connected to assets living in a blockchain, when you do leave the system, you know you'll actually get paid. So it's a provably fair game. And it turns out that you can take this concept and abstract it to do lots of computation, private contracts in general, or even decentralized exchange. So that's the third part of computation. The first part is, let's build better virtual machines and support lots of machines because we don't know which one's going to win. The second part is, let's let people prove they've done computation correctly. And the third part is, let's let people collaborate in the short term to solve particular problems, whether that be poker or something else. So we have a lab at Tokyo Institute of Tech, and we have two people there, Mario Larangera and Bernardo David. They've been publishing papers like crazy on this topic. The first was Kaleidoscope, the second is Royale, and they have more coming. And every single one of those is an MPC protocol that will eventually pull into Cardano through something called Cardano Service Layer, which will be available to application developers to be embedded within their applications. So these really difficult things that you'd like to do, like shuffling cards or generating random numbers or Oracle services, can actually be done off-chain. And they can be done at a much lower cost than if they were replicated in a smart contract and run on a system like Ethereum. Also, it scales because your game doesn't consume resources from the main network. It's consuming resources from the players of the game, whether that be an exchange game or that be a poker game. Okay? So, to have a great computational model, this is how you have to think. You have to have a bit of principles, so you have to have good research, and you have to have a bit of pragmatism, where you realize that maybe, just maybe, you're not going to get the idea right. And so you need to be able to borrow from the people who did get it right and move quick enough so that you can become the market standard all the same. Now, are we done yet? No! We still have that governance issue. It's a big issue. How do we resolve the issue of paying and deciding? This is a common issue every single cryptocurrency has, and there's a lot of solutions. Some of them